And a very happy Friday to you at 12:08 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, it is the Friday after the special election in Oakland, where the Alameda County Registrar of Voters said we will have an update on Friday as to who won in that mayor's race. No update.
Well, that's pretty on brand for them.
They can't count 40,000 ballots in 5 days.
You could have stopped after count. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Well, we know that California Governor Gavin Newsom regards himself as a pretty enlightened chap. However, when he talks about gas prices in the state of California, he sounds like Art Bell. He thinks that the oil companies all got together in a meeting room in New York City, or maybe Houston, since we're dealing with oil here, and they all decided that they would get together and collude to spike the prices in one state, California, and not do it in the 49 others or the territories, because they're out to get us. And that's the reason that gasoline is so high in California.
I'm sick and tired of being screwed.
Now, I know it doesn't make any sense, but that doesn't matter to him because the boy wants to be president. And now some of his draconian policies that are driving the oil industry out of the state of California and driving prices high at the pump, well, they're now under the skin of Valero.
Valero has announced that they'll be closing one of their refineries about a year from now. And if you add that to the Phillips 66 closure next year, we are drastically limiting the amount of refineries that refine gasoline in the largest state in the union, in the, as Gavin loves to say, fifth largest economy in the world.
And this will result in more pain at the pump.
For more, here's KPIX.
Potentially devastating closure for a small Bay Area city. Today, Valero announcing it's considering closing its Benicia refinery as soon as...
Yeah, if you're a refinery town and the refinery goes away, the town goes under.
Yeah, there's not much else in those towns.
As soon as next April, and that could impact drivers across the entire state. Right now, just 5 refineries remain in the Bay Area, all in Contra Costa and Solano counties. The 2 labeled in green have switched to renewable fuels. That leaves just 3 refineries producing oil: Chevron in Richmond, the Martinez Refining Company, and Valero. California...
I think we're down to like under 10 for the entire state.
Yeah, does he realize that people in the state still drive cars?
That is something we are mindful of.
Californians are already paying sky-high gas prices compared to the rest of the country, about $1.70 per gallon above the national average. That gap has shrunk over the past 2 years, though a Valero shutdown could erase some of that progress.
Wasn't Gavin's latest special session supposed to lower the gas prices? Because that hasn't happened.
Oh, yeah. No, it didn't lower gas prices, but it did generate a lot of attention for him.
And in Benicia, those fears extend well beyond the price at the pump. Our Katie Nielsen joins us live from Benicia with more on the potential impact to the city right now. Katie.
Yeah, Juliet, as you mentioned earlier, this refinery here in Benicia produces about 10% of the state's gasoline. That's about 3.5 million gallons of gas every single day.
10% is not insignificant.
No, that is a number that is large enough to cause prices to go up very, very, very high.
And as you've explained before, the cost of gasoline will de facto increase the cost of everything because it increases the cost of transportation.
And don't forget, the summer blend is coming up, so the prices are going to increase just as a result of that.
So it's really not catastrophic to the state as a whole, since it is just under 10%.
Yeah, but with Phillips 66, now we're at 20%. And who knows who's planning on closing next?
I'm sure there are others thinking about it.
But to the city of Benicia, this is going to be a major hit.
thought that Valero would be here for, certainly through my term of office.
Benicia Mayor Steve Young said when he took office in 2020, he never imagined he'd be the one to lead the city through one of the biggest challenges in its history, the potential closing of the single largest employer.
How about that? You take office in 2020, you have to deal with COVID, and now your largest employer is leaving.
Well, what do you do if you're a politician in a state where your city is dependent on an industry that is in the crosshairs of the person in charge of the state and the legislature? Because if that plant closes and there is no oil refinery in Benicia, people in your town don't eat.
As well as the single largest source of tax revenue.
There is a sort of a whole cascade of impacts that we have to prepare for.
The refining plant first opened in Benicia in the 1960s by Exxon and was sold to Valero in 2000. Today, Valero pays the city about $8 million a year in taxes, which makes up about 10% of the city's general fund.
That's not going to be good.
No, it's not.
Ripple effects, they're coming.
They're also a major contributor to nonprofits as well as youth sports, not to mention all the other businesses they serve.
There's going to be no more lacrosse in Benicia.
No, and this is an important point because there are different industries with different ethoses, where you have the industries that really ran the state for a long period of time. When you refer to those industries, you're basically talking about oil, you're talking about the railroads, and later on you're talking about aerospace and the defense industry. And they knew how to be good stewards in the community because they've been here a long time. And they were deeply involved in our politics. They were deeply involved in our civic affairs. They're deeply involved in charitable foundations, those sorts of things. They knew how to behave. They knew how to act. Well, now we have a lot of these tech companies in California that are the big dogs, and they don't see themselves as California companies. They see themselves as global companies, and they see a lot of those things that those other industries used to do as being something that's not particularly relevant to them. Well, okay, but you lose the remaining oil companies that are here. Don't expect checks to your charitable organization. Don't expect checks to your hospital. Don't expect checks to your candidates for local office. All of that is going to dry up when you get rid of industries that knew how to play in those worlds.
Not to mention all the other businesses they support, like suppliers, trucking companies, all the way down to local restaurants. In a statement, the Valero CEO said, "We understand the impact this may have on our employees, business partners, and community, and will continue to work with them through this period." Oil industry experts say California...
You've got a year to figure out another life, kiddo.
Oil industry experts say California could see more of these refineries closing simply due to state policies.
They have determined largely in the last 18 months that it's a very hostile environment to run those businesses.
And think about the state that we're in, the state that has more cars than any other state, the state that has more miles driven than any other state. This is obviously where the oil companies want to be, except for all the policy put forth by Gavin Newsom.
And at the same time that we're chasing them out, other states are bending over backwards to welcome them.
A lot of fines, a lot of different consequences.
The Bay Area Air Quality Management District fined Valero $82 million last year for air pollution violations at the Benicia refinery, the largest fine in agency history. With fewer refineries in the state, it could mean shortages in the gas supply chain.
That means more spikes.
You notice, by the way, how the CPUC falls asleep at the switch when it comes to regulating PG&E or Southern California Edison or any of those companies that they regulate that are doing things like starting fires. Yet you have an industry like the oil industry that is employing Californians, that is allowing Californians to go from point A to point B, bringing money into state coffers, bringing money into city coffers and county coffers. And what do? They can't run them out of town fast enough.
Which means prices could go up.
It's always a state that's one refinery problem away from $1 or $2 surge in gas prices.
But in Benicia, gas prices could be the least of the city's worries if it loses its major economic driver.
We're going to certainly survive this.
Probably not.
No. If you lived here in California after the end of the Cold War, when they just started shutting down military bases and different defense industry contractors were moving out of state, going to places like Washington State or Virginia or around the country, you know what kind of damage that did to those communities. The economy just fell apart. The bottom just fell out. Look at areas like Victorville when George Air Force Base was shut down. That area never recovered. No new industry moved in to pick up the slack. It's just an area that's depressed where the people who make all the money work for the government. When the rich people work for the government, that's a bad sign.
We may not thrive as much as we had planned in the near future. I think it's hyperbolic to think this represents the end of Benicia as we know it.
No, it's not.
What industry is going to move there now?
Now, there is still no final decision, but all signs point to Valero going ahead and closing this refinery. It would be in April of 2026. We still have a year to try to figure out exactly what to do here for the city itself. Now, as for Valero, they actually own another refinery down in Southern California. And based on the statements from today, they're also considering whether it's still economically viable to keep that one open. So,
oh, no.
Now, if they close Benicia, they're closing Southern California, too.
We could actually get notice of yet another closure.
And add that to Phillips 66, you could have 3 refineries closing in the next year.
And remember what she said, one refinery going down, and they have fires at these refineries sometimes, or sometimes they're down for maintenance, whatever the case may be. It could impact gas prices by $1 or $2 a gallon.
You know that Gavin's response to this is going to be yet another special session where he says the oil companies are screwing you.
Oh, yeah. Punish them more. That'll help.
That is something we are mindful of.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, the weekend is almost here. We're not going to be doing any live shows on Saturday or Sunday, but if you want to listen to us, you can do that quite easily.
It is so simple. Everyone should do it. Just load up your phone with the podcast, even if you never plan on listening to them, because you might be in a situation where you're bored and you need them. So you can do this in a multitude of ways. You can search for The John Phillips Show on Apple Podcasts. If you have an iPhone, that purple button is Apple Podcasts. Everybody has that. So download it. The iHeartRadio app, a lot of people listen to their podcasts with that. Spotify, you can get there. Either one of those. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could also do what George Gascon pretty much only does to himself in the middle of the night.
Do a Google on YouTube.
The John Phillips Show. All 3 hours every day are posted on YouTube, so you can listen to them right there. I would say watch them, but it's just a static picture of Johnny with little waveforms of the audio. But, I love using YouTube for almost everything, so that's one way to go. You can also go to one of our radio station websites. You can go to KABC.com or KSFO.com and go to the John Phillips Show page. All the shows are right there. Either way, there are several ways to download this show. It helps the show out when you download it, because then we can brag to our bosses that people are downloading the show. And you get an extra bonus, because when you're driving around on a Saturday or Sunday and there's nothing on but infomercials, you could pretend that it's
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. Hey, look at this. The LA County Fair is back, celebrating its 103rd anniversary, May 2nd through 26th. Don't miss the largest county fair and the best entertainment in Southern California. Deep fried everything. Tickets on sale at lacountyfair.com right now. Caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222. That's 1-888-790-5222. Gets a 4-pack of tickets to the fair. Tickets furnished by the LA County Fair. Good luck dialing.
All right, so we told you that Valero is thinking about picking up their toys and leaving California, but it's not just Valero that Gavin has to worry about.
There's a executive, a vice president at Chevron, who every single time there is a story about Gavin Newsom making the state even more expensive to live by driving out these oil companies, likes to remind Ashley Zavala that all of these problems are man-made.
For more, here's KCRA.
Today, we're hearing from a Chevron executive as 2 other oil companies are either considering or planning to shut down facilities in California. This comes as California's government continues to try.
It's funny. Valero leaving the state reminds me, wasn't it Antonio Villaraigosa that told Valero to get the hell out of the state?
Yeah, for whatever reason, it's not just Newsom, but so many California Democrats just decide to pop off on these companies by name, and then they get surprised when there are consequences for doing that.
This comes as California's government continues to try to cut the state's use of oil and gas while adding more rules for that industry.
Which is not totally working out.
Nope. Right now, we're going over all of the state of California's troubles with the oil industry. First, we told you about what's going on with Valero, but now Chevron is unhappy with what's coming out of Sacramento, too.
While adding more rules for that industry. Valero told state regulators yesterday they are considering idling, restructuring, or stopping operations altogether at its refinery in Benicia by April of next year. That comes after Phillips 66 has said it will shut down its LA area refinery by October of this year. If both of those facilities are out of the equation, that would mean California would be left with just 7 refineries.
If any one of those goes down for maintenance, it's going to be a massive spike.
Well, and sometimes one's down for maintenance and one has a fire, so you have 2 down at once. So then you go from 7 to 5.
And Gavin's special session that was supposed to address that specific thing where he required the oil companies to buy these giant tanks so they could store more oil, that not only hasn't worked, it's chasing out even more of them.
And I suspect more will be on the way.
Chevron operates 2 of them here in the state. Here's what Chevron's Vice President of Fuels, Mike Bowman, had to say.
California has unfortunately had policies for the last 20 years that have led us to this point, and it's become increasingly a difficult place for our industry to operate.
Yeah, well, Gavin might be the worst offender. This goes back beyond Gavin to Jerry Brown, even to Arnold Schwarzenegger, because cap and trade has to do with a lot of this nonsense.
And what's funny is, okay, they want to move from fossil fuels to electric. I get that. It's better for the air. It's better for the environment. I understand. Elon's certainly changing that world for us, and other companies are trying to catch up to him. However, the way the market works is when electric cars become cheaper and more efficient than the gas-powered cars, the public will start buying them. And we're already seeing that happen. But you can't regulate your way into new technology. When the automobile came around and Henry Ford was selling cars, you didn't have to regulate the horse and buggy out of existence. That's not how it works. People looked at the car and they said, I don't have to feed that hay, do I? Why don't we try that?
Well, and by having this mandate where there will be 0 gas-powered cars sold in the state of California in 2035, you're telling the companies, well, you better get out because you can't do business here. So what do you think? They're going to you think they're going to stay until December 31st, 2034? No, they're getting out now.
And so it is a challenge. It's concerning for the future as the impacts of policy are placed on the consumers in California. But there are things that can be done to get us back on a path that it has a more balanced approach to energy that provides reliable, affordable, and cleaner energy. And that's what we want to see happen in Sacramento is let's get on a path that is sustainable for the industry and for the consumers of California.
Well, there's going to need to be a big change to the governor's mansion and the supermajority for that to happen.
What do you expect them to do? If you're an industry that's under attack from the people in charge of the state where you're doing business, what is the expectation? How do you think they're going to react to this? They're just going to stand there and take it on the chin over and over and over again? That's not how this works.
What specifically would you be looking at from Sacramento, like deregulation
Yeah, so there's the list can be long, but I'll give you some specifics. A repeal of the ban on gasoline, diesel, and natural gas vehicles that hit impacts in 2035, right? That ban is a direct affront on the industry and makes it difficult to invest when there is what we refer to as the ICE ban. We believe consumers should have the choice.
And by having that ban, they're investing all their dollars in Texas, which, by the way, Texas, even with none of these regulations, has cleaner air than California. Explain that one.
Good point.
Of what products they purchase, and let's make a level playing field and let everyone compete, including liquid fuels in the future. So a repeal of that ban on consumer choice that takes away gasoline, diesel, and natural gas vehicles. That's right at the top of the list. There's a bill that was passed last year.
By the way, a lot of these pieces of legislation where they're going to ban something 20 years from now, a lot of that is performative, where they have no interest in following through on it. Look at the ban on, what was it, Diablo Canyon? They wanted to take Diablo Canyon, the nuclear facility, offline.
Oh, yeah, that was the big cause for a very long time.
And they actually put it on the books. And then at a certain point, they realized the lights would go out if they actually did that. So they keep granting them extensions. Well, okay, fine. The lights didn't go out. Diablo Canyon is still open. But if you're in the nuclear energy business, how can you plan on anything? How do you know what's going to happen in the future? Or how can you plan on having your employees around, your business around, when every few years it's a jump ball as to whether or not you're going to be able to stay open and operational?
SB 1.2 that has a margin cap possibility on the refining business. You can't make investments when there's this looming threat that we're going to come in and tell you what we believe it was an acceptable amount of money for you to make. And so it makes it difficult to impossible to invest.
And you think about all the bills that are passed and signed every single year, so many of them that are targeted at just one industry, making it more difficult every single year. I'm surprised that we'll still have 7 refineries next year.
And this is where Gavin, essentially being a phony businessman, is important. Because he likes to portray himself as a business-friendly Democrat, as someone who ran Plumpjack. Well, it's not exactly like running an oil refinery. He was involved in business with the Getty family in a gentry-class business where everything was essentially handed to him. That's not how most businesses are. Most businesses have to struggle to survive, and they have to do things to make sure that the climate works for them. If you're Chevron and the climate is hammering you on a daily basis, because that's where Gavin Newsom thinks Democratic voters are, then guess what? You have to fight back.
In that environment. So the margin cap needs to go away.
What is the likelihood that Chevron might have to take the same path as Valero and Phillips 66?
Yeah, so Chevron, it's a little bit different, right? We've been in California for 140 years. It's a business that I'm a California native.
They did already decide that they're moving a lot of their corporate offices. That's happening.
And
they can move everything if they want to.
It's a business that I'm a California native. I went to school here. Our roots are in California. So look, it's a good business for us. We want to stay here. The problem is the policies of California are making it uninvestable for the future. So, what's going to happen down the road, I won't speculate. I have no idea. I won't speculate on that. We want to be here. We want to be a great provider of the products that Californians need.
Definitely not a definite no, we're never leaving.
No, but I think he's being honest. I think they would prefer to stay. But if the state makes it impossible for them to stay, then they'll move.
Voman also told me Chevron would like talks with California's Democratic leaders to be more productive. He said there needs to be an honest discussion about the impacts of the state's policies.
By the way, Gavin Newsom handed out all those bat phones to all the CEOs around the country, all around the state, so he could have a direct line with business. Did Chevron get a bat phone?
Well, if so, his line would be ringing.
Now, Gavin Newsom was asked about the refinery closure at his press conference where he was talking about, what was that nut again?
Pistachios.
Let's hear what Gavin had to say.
Yeah, Valero. Just briefly on that, respecting the importance of that question. Under our special session, the first special session bill we advanced, there was a requirement to give notification as relates to any augmentation operations or closures for refineries in the state of California.
So he's calling this a success because they told him a year out that they're closing?
All right. I guess you can count the wins wherever you can.
Pursuant to that, we were given notification this morning, late last night, early this morning, made official, and we have a year to now address that issue. And I can assure you, beginning last night, we had all hands, and we're in the process of addressing any anxiety that may be created or any market disruption that may be created.
How about Benicia?
What does that answer even mean?
It means nothing.
By that announcement, but we have time pursuant to that special session.
Sometimes he just spits out jargon. It's not necessarily strung together with any logical thought.
No, I was trying to follow what he was saying, and I can't figure it out.
To mark some progress. And already this morning, first thing this morning, our teams are assembling to advance that progress in concert and partnership with the legislature. On your first question.
Yeah, so he said nothing.
I'll tell you. What is it with Democratic candidates who just spit out these word salads that mean nothing? That is part of the reason that Kamala Harris lost the presidential election. No one could understand what she was saying.
We are doing it.
And then you have Javier Baccaria, who throws in his hat for governor, and he can't answer a question directly to save his life.
No, instead of telling you what exactly his policies are and what he stands for, he starts telling you about brushing his teeth.
Scrub it.
And then you have Gavin Newsom, who typically makes more sense than the rest of them. And by sense, I don't mean common sense, but I mean you can understand what he's saying. Just short-circuited. Well, we know that Gavin Newsom is termed out as governor of California, and we know that someone else will replace him. But, Randy, we still don't know who that someone else is quite yet.
We do know it's most likely not going to be Javier Baccaria.
Scrub it.
As a new poll shows him with 2% support in 7th or 8th place.
That's 2 points more than I thought he'd get.
But, of course, the latest poll from Emerson College shows Kamala Harris with a commanding lead, even though she hasn't said she's running. If she doesn't run, the front runner is...
Little D.
Katie Porter.
Oh, boy.
For more on the latest poll...
You know, we might go from the frying pan to the fire.
Paul! For more on this new poll that has good numbers for Porter and bad numbers for Gavin... Here's Fox 40 in Sacramento.
She ran and lost the race for president in 2024.
Oh, that's got to sting.
That's why she would run for president, so she doesn't go out of politics as a loser.
Governor, you mean?
Yeah.
But could Kamala Harris run and win the race for California governor in 2026 when Gavin Newsom is termed out? According to this new exclusive poll from Emerson College, Inside California Politics and The Hill, the answer is yes. The survey finding Harris, who has not said whether she plans to run for governor, as of now would have 31% support.
You know, I really do not understand how many people would vote for her based on a hypothetical maybe she's running. What exactly has she said in the last 10 years about California politics that makes you think she can fix this state?
Nothing. And by the way, even though she's in the lead, 30-something% is not exactly where you want to be if you're her. You want a number that's so eye-popping that you just clear the field. And you look at the Republican primary for president in 2028, and there are early polls that have been conducted, and J.D. Vance is like in the 60% range. That's where she wants to be. If you're in the 30s, you're certainly the front runner, but that's not a strong showing.
Well, and the last time Emerson did this poll just a few months ago, she was in the 50s, so it's dropping.
Fourth. In second, Democratic former U.S. Senate candidate and former Orange County Congressmember Katie Porter.
Is she running or campaigning at all? Because all I see her is posting the occasional video on Insta.
Yeah, I saw her on with Alex Michelson, and then after that, it's just internet videos where it's her swearing around, up and down.
Candidate and former Orange County Congressmember Katie Porter with 8% support. And rounding out the top 5, each with less than 5% support, Riverside County Sheriff Republican Chad Bianco, California Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis.
Eleni, you got 3%.
Well, just wait till she starts spending tens of millions of dollars.
For Californians.
And former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa.
He's in the top 5, everyone.
For now.
Matt Taglia of Emerson College Polling helped conduct the survey.
I think the main takeaway here is that with Harris in the race, this is very much hers to lose.
But if Harris does not run, the poll found Porter would have the strongest support. Still, in that scenario, more than half of respondents, 54%, say they're undecided who they'd vote for.
Someone else, please.
If Kamala doesn't get in, my guess is you'll see more bold-faced names enter the race.
Without Harris, this is an open contest.
As for our current governor and his...
That was a long sis. Guy sounds like a snake.
Sat on that for a while.
Without Harris, this is an open...
That's an odd way of pronouncing it.
Without Harris, this is an open contest.
As for our current...
He combined Harris and this into one is.
Without Harris, this is an open contest.
I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced that way before.
As for our current governor and his future, nearly 6 out of every 10 respondents said they hope Newsom does not run for president in 2028.
And that's in his home state.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be the next president of the United States. I used to fear that we were dumb enough to vote for him, and now his record is so awful and so bad that I don't think he can get around it. He's trying to get around it by changing the subject and only talking about national issues with national figures, but I don't know how you explain away the condition of the state.
While about 4 of every 10 said they hope he does. The poll finding as of now, Newsom holds a 33% approval rating and 42% disapproval rating in California.
Gavin is underwater in California.
33% in a deep blue state is awful.
While President...
25% had no opinion on the matter because it is California.
That's true.
While President Donald Trump in the Golden State has a 28% approval rating and 56% disapproval rating. Political scientists say the results on Trump are expected in this blue state. But as for the results on Newsom...
These are rough numbers for Gavin Newsom. And I think this is a function of a lot of things. One, he's not a candidate. He's currently in office. And...
Well, those aren't the reasons why those numbers are low at all.
Now, how about this? People are unhappy with him because you have to buy your shampoo through Bulletproof Glass.
Yeah, that might be it.
How ghetto does it look that they have to lock up the socks?